Yes, everybody, welcome back to another match preview. Wolverhampton Wanderers will be taking on Southampton this Saturday at Molineux. Still searching for our first win of the season, and it was a disappointing goalless draw this week against Bournemouth as well. We were hoping to bounce back after obviously a draw against Newcastle last weekend and Bournemouth having quite a heavy defeat, but unfortunately it wasn't the case. Wolves struggling once again to create the opportunities, and it's been an occurring theme for Bruno Lage and the squad, not just for this season, but obviously for most of last season as well. As always, going to be giving my thoughts ahead of this game. We'll have the opposition preview later on in the video as well. But as always, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Things have to change, and sharpish really. We need to try and get the ball in the back of the net a little bit more often. Southampton have had a decent start to the season. They'll be on a high as well. They've just beaten Chelsea this week, 2-1. But Wolves, I'm recording this on deadline day. Willy Bolly is gone. Dendoncker is on the verge of leaving. Hopefully we get one or two more signings in as well. I'm going to jump straight into my predicted lineup, guys, because this is how I want to see Wolves play this weekend. I want us to go attacking. I want us to get more men forward. As you can see, Jose Sarr in goal. I'd bring Ait-Nouri in. Semedo on the right, Ait-Nouri on the left. Collins and Kilman obviously in the middle. I would keep Nunez and Neves holding. And let's get extra men up there. Podence as a number 10. Neto and Guedes on the wings. And Sasha Kalajdzic for his debut. Give him a start. Let's do it. I think Raul Jimenez looks out of sorts at the moment. Let's give the big man the option. Let's try and get Podence running in behind him, get that hold-up play going, and see what we can do. I'm really excited to see how we can get on, but the pressure may well be on Bruno Lage. I don't know what you guys think about this, but he's really struggling. The club obviously have spent a lot of money on him, so I understand he deserves probably more time with a squad. But when you look at our running after this weekend against Southampton, we've got Liverpool, we've got Manchester City. It's going to be a really, really difficult running for us, and we could go into the first international break. If we don't win this weekend, we're going to look in a very, very awkward position. And that's probably when, by the international break, that may well be when Wolves, make a decision if things haven't improved by now. Of course, I hope they do. Of course, I hope we can get a win this weekend. But Southampton obviously are a difficult team, a tricky team to play up against. Also, of course, we've got our Betmate pot for this week. This weekend's pot is the Prem Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs. Loads of you joined the midweek one, which was great to see. I didn't win much money. I won a little bit, but not a lot, unfortunately. But it's a £600 guaranteed payout. It's £3 to enter. The pot code is on the screen, but it will also be on the main screen of the app as well. A link to download it is in the description. It's a fantasy football game if you haven't already played it. You've got to be 18 plus, a UK residence only, and please do gamble aware. But now we'll jump into the opposition preview. I sat down and spoke to Steve from the Total Saints pod, and this is what he said ahead of this weekend's game. So then, guys, delighted to be sat down with Steve from the Total Saints podcast to preview this weekend's game. Steve, firstly, how are you keeping?
Yeah, going well. This week's been a good one football-wise. I think three more points than most of us were expecting out of the two games. So things are suddenly looking quite good.
Yeah, it was a great win for you during the week, obviously against Chelsea. We'll get into that a little bit more now. In your eyes, how's the season gone for you so far? Which sort of teams have you been facing off against, and what sort of results have you been getting?
Dreadful start. Spurs away, got absolutely hammered there. 4-1, could easily have been 6 or 7. But it was one of those games where, when the fixtures came out, it always looked like a pretty horrible one off the back of a dreadful end of the season, similar to yours, I think, in terms of sort of one win in about a dozen, I think. But Spurs away, opening game of the season where they're quite buoyant, having spent a bit of money, having squeezed into the Champions League on sort of at the back end of the season. So everyone's sort of thinking that they've got the momentum, and we're always terrible on the opening day. Doesn't matter who we're playing. I think genuinely, I think we've won twice on the opening day in the last 25 years.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. Like even in League One, we didn't win on the opening day. either season down there. So it's we're just cursed on that opening day. So it was good to get a game that we were probably expecting to lose out of the way on
Hmm.
that one. But kind of the manner of defending was pretty concerning. Didn't get an awful lot better first home game against Leeds. We were okay first half. There was kind of nothing in the game going into half time. Start of the second half, we could see twice in the space of 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, you're thinking, well, I mean, those rumours that were doing the rounds during the week in the papers about Ralph having lost the dressing room and things like
Yeah,
that, maybe there's something to it. But all of a sudden, we kind of gained a foothold in the game, changed the system, went at Leeds and got a draw out of the game. Probably could have won it in the end. And kind of since then, we've not really looked back. A little bit unlucky to lose to United last Saturday.
yeah,
I mean, apparently handling it 3 times in the area in one movement is absolutely fine. So so yeah, we carry on. And but yeah, we took positives out of that despite losing, and then took it into Tuesday against Chelsea. And I mean, I think we kind of took advantage of them looking a little bit not quite sure of what they're trying to do at the moment.
yeah.
But you can only beat what's in front of you. And I mean, in truth, 2-1 win, we probably should have won by 3 or 4 in the end. But yeah, so positive coming into the weekend, and sounds like we're making about 4 signings today. So
Yeah.
that should be interesting as well. See how everything fits together.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy deadline day. We're recording this obviously sort of in the afternoon of deadline day. So there's, I think Wolves. I'm hoping Wolves grab a couple of signings as well. It's funny you say that about the opening day. I did a tweet earlier on that ever since Wolves have been back in the Premier League, we've never won in August. Never won a game over the last sort of 4 or 5 seasons. So I'm hoping now we're going to September on Saturday. We might have a chance of winning the game. But yeah, Southampton got a decent run in for September. To be fair, Steve, they've got ourselves. They then play Brentford at home, Villa away, even creeping into October, Everton at home. So it's a chance probably for you guys to get a little bit of momentum. You mentioned transfers there. There's been a few signings in. A lot of younger players, I noticed, Steve, as well. What's been your thoughts so far on the transfer business that Saints have conducted?
I mean, at the time, I kind of liked the idea of what they were trying to do, but kind of thought that it was a fairly high risk strategy to go for basically all of these young, sort of promising players.
Yeah,
I mean, we kind of had that sort of ethos a number of years ago, but it wasn't to this extent. Back then we were signing like 23, 24-year-olds who
yeah,
would then go on and provide resale value.
yeah.
I mean, Virgil van Dijk's the obvious one. We paid 10 million from Celtic and sold him on for 75.
Hmm.
And whereas now we're going for literally like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, paying, I mean, not too dissimilar figures, which I guess is just natural inflation, I guess.
Yeah,
Um, but now those players are now sort of either in the first team or sort of knocking on the door already. So there's clearly a lot of talent there. I mean, it probably also doesn't say an awful lot for the guys that they're replacing. But no, I mean, I've liked the look of the players that have come in so far. I mean, I think all of them have been under 21, with the exception of Joe Aribo
yeah,
from Rangers. And yeah, I mean, they've all contributed so far. I think Gavin Bazunu looks a huge step up from Alex McCarthy.
yeah.
He's probably a reasonable step up from Fraser Forster. I think Forster is probably a better sort of just out and out shot stopper. But then he's got 15 years experience on him.
Mm,
But I think Bazunu fits the system that we want to play in terms of playing the ball out, but also having the accuracy when he goes long as well.
hmm.
Forster kind of got a little bit better with that, but it was never his strong suit.
Yeah,
But I think the pick of the lads so far has been Romeo Lavia in the centre midfield, holding midfielder, 18 years old, signed from Man City for about 10 million. I think they've got like a 45 million buyback clause, which kicks in, I think, in 2 years' time. And I mean, based on the first 5 games of the season, I mean, they'll be activating that on the first day it's available, because I mean, so far from what I've seen, he's that good.
Yeah.
But it's one of those where sort of fresh environment, they can come into these sort of things and they can stand out. It's a case of then putting a run of those performances together over a prolonged period of time, getting a little bit of consistency, which you always kind of worry is kind of the issue with younger players, where they're not used to playing at this sort of intensity,
Yeah.
sort of 2-3 times a week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, like you said, a lot of young, talented players. Lavi, was he the one that scored the goal this week?
Yes.
Yeah, and did he pick up a knock in the end? Is he going to be all right for the
Yeah, so
game, or is he
he
going
so he
to
went
be injured?
off holding his hamstring, but then
Mm,
having seen the game back, you can see at the end of the game when he's walking onto the pitch for handshakes and all that sort of stuff. He seems to be walking absolutely fine,
mm,
and he supposedly said to our local BBC reporter that he feels okay.
mm.
So maybe he's fit. I'm not quite sure who else would play holding midfield, given that today we've just sold Oriol Romeo to Girona.
Yeah,
So I kind of hope that he's fit, but at the same time, you don't want to rush it,
mm,
because at the end of the day, we've got an international break coming up in 3 weeks' time.
yeah,
There's no point in kind of rushing the kid back when there's kind of no real urgency, particularly now we've got 7 points on the board. Realistically, that's probably at least 4 points than most of us expected at this stage, given the tough run of games on paper that we've
yeah.
just had.
Yeah, and you mentioned him a little bit earlier. Obviously, Ralph Hasenhüttl. What's your thoughts, and what's the sort of Southampton fan base's thoughts on him as a manager?
It does seem to fluctuate based on individual results.
Mm,
It's I think there's a sense of frustration that at times we look so good, and then literally like a week later we turn into like the world's worst football team.
yeah,
And we can kind of have those highs and those lows, and there's kind of very little consistency at either end of the spectrum. Um, and I think certainly the mood through the summer was one of he's got to start well, otherwise he's in a whole world of trouble. And then we didn't start well, and you're thinking, ooh, certainly like an hour into that Leeds game, said to the guy stood next to me, I'm not sure how he makes it through this. And then all of a sudden, half an hour later, we've turned the game around and got a point out of it, and all of a sudden everyone's sort of looking sort of much happier with the situation.
mm,
I think realistically, given that the previous 3.5 years he's been with us, he's not really had any money to spend, or when he has had money, we've had to sell someone first in order to fund any new purchases. Whereas
yeah,
this summer, with the new owners that came in over Christmas, they've basically said, look, we're happy for you to bring in players now without the need for selling. We'll kind of take care of that further down the line. So I mean, we've already spent the best part of 50 million quid, and I think we've probably got about 3 or 4 back in from selling Romeo, and that's about it.
yeah,
Cleared a few high earners off the wage bill. Shane Long and Fraser Forster both left on a free.
yeah,
Romeo presumably was reasonably well up the pay scale as well. But other than that, we've only been bringing people in, so that's been positive, that we've been able to kind of be more proactive rather than. I mean, I know we're as I say, we're probably going to announce four signings today.
yeah,
But usually those are in previous years, often those deadline day signings would be the only ones we'd make. We'd be having to wait for the sort of trickle down effect of everybody else above us making their moves, and then we get to see what's available.
yeah,
But I think with that extra backing, we've been able to go out and get stuff done. And I mean, we've already seen the benefit in these first 5 games of the season, the benefit of having those signings in the door before you start pre-season.
So, Steve, I was gonna say I'll put you on the spot a little bit, but I'll probably not. But Hasenhüttl, what's his sort of formation, and if in terms of predicted lineup, or how would you line up Saints on Saturday at Molineux?
So I think because you've gone to a back 4 now, haven't you? So I think
Correct. Yeah.
our system won't because what we've done in previous games when you've played three at the back, we've tended to match you in midfield, because you don't want to get over, because your big quality is in the centre of midfield, so we would always want to make sure we're at least matched up, if not having more bodies in there. So I suspect that on Saturday we'll probably go with a similar system as we did on Tuesday against Chelsea. So it'll be a flat back four with one sitting midfielder. Hopefully that's Lavia if he's fit and ready to go. If not, then possibly Ibrahima Diallo might move back there. Personally, I'd prefer him to play slightly further forward, because I don't think he's quite got the defensive positional discipline needed. But then in front of that holding midfielder, you'd have the central two, so that'd be Ward-Prowse and, as I say, it was Diallo on Tuesday, but could bring somebody else in on Saturday if injuries require it, Aribo possibly, and then probably two wide forwards. Elyounoussi played Tuesday. He did okay, but I think he's a more steady hand, and I'd like to see us be a little bit more proactive on Saturday, given that you're struggling a little bit. So maybe Aribo starts in that kind of more forward position. Adam Armstrong on the left-hand side and Shea Adams down the middle.
And the sort of defensive, obviously Bazunu probably starting a goal. Defensively, how is Hassan Hoodle been setting up so far, sort of personnel wise?
I mean, since the basically last three games, we've gone with the more or less the same setup. So it's flat back four with Bella Kotchap and Salisu in the middle. Carl Walker-Peters on the right. Musa Gineppo's played every game at left back or left wing back up until Tuesday when we brought Roman Perrault in. Basically, Perrault's been injured all summer. He got injured about 2 weeks before the end of the season and was only kind of fit enough for sort of sub appearances first couple of games. So I don't know which way he'll go on that one. Gineppo's not really a fullback.
Yeah.
We signed him as a sort of attacking winger, kind of almost a Sadio Mane replacement, but has kind of had to kind of take his sort of chance. The only position that's kind of opened up for him has been playing as a wing back or at left fullback. So, but he's done okay. He's grown into that role this season, and he's been all right. So I think it's basically a toss of a coin between those two at left back. I think Perrault's a better defender. Gineppo gives you more pace, a little bit more sort of unpredictability. But I think that kind of works both ways because he's a little bit unpredictable defensively as well.
And before we finish, in terms of, for your opinion of Wolves, Steve, what do you think of Wolves, how they're doing so far, and which Wolves players do you think could damage Southampton the most on Saturday?
I mean, it looks like, just looking at your goals for column, just looks like you're really struggling in front of goal. But that's, that's not really a new thing, is it? That was a problem last year.
Couple of years.
And I mean, it's basically coincided with, obviously, he sold Diogo Jota to Liverpool, and Raul Jimenez had his head caved in. And he's not. I mean, as much as obviously he scored that really good goal against us last season, he's not really looked the same player. Because I mean, he looked like a 50, 60 million pound striker.
Definitely.
Before that injury, and since he's come back, just looks like he's really struggling to get back into the same rhythm. I don't know whether that's a mental thing, whether he's not quite as sort of dominating as a centre forward presence anymore. I must admit, I've not seen. I think the only game of yours I've seen so far this season was the Spurs one that was on TV, where I actually thought, like, through midfield you look really good, but there's just a lack of cutting edge, really. But I don't know. I think I don't know whether the new defensive system works for you. I think losing Cody probably loses some goodwill among the fan base as well for the manager, which I mean he could do with all the help he can get at the moment, I suspect. Given the mood that I kind of sense from your neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting game. Obviously, with Southampton having a good start, I'm sure your fans will be sort of being quite positive going into this game. We looked. I think you got favourable fixtures coming up. So, saying that, Steve, what would be your score prediction going into Saturday's game?
I mean, I think I still take a draw. Our record at
Mm.
Molineux is not great.
Yeah,
Other than that, I don't know. I don't know if you remember that ridiculous 6-0 win we had back in
yeah, Championship, yeah,
about 2007, I think it was,
yeah.
where I think we only had 5 shots on target all game, and somehow won 6-0. It was absolutely ridiculous game, and I think that game has basically used up our entire portion of luck
Yeah.
for games at Molineux. So yeah, I mean, as I say, we've got a poor record there. I'd take a point. I mean, I think we can win if we're
Mm,
positive and everybody kind of comes up sort of fully fit from Tuesday's excursions. Obviously,
yeah.
bear in mind we've had an extra day's rest as well.
Mm,
Then I mean, there's no reason we can't win, other than that I just think that we'll find a way not to.
yeah.
So I would probably go for a 1-1 draw.
1-1 draw. It'd be interesting. I think, there'd be Wolves fans out there who would probably take that. But I think we've drawn out opening 2 home games. Not many teams would draw. They're opening 3 home games. So obviously, I'm hoping to get a win. And Bruno Lage, I think, desperately needs a win as well on Saturday. But it certainly will be an interesting game. Steve, thank you very much for joining me on Talking Wolves. You guys can find the Total Saints pod. I'll leave a link to their podcast in the description down below. And Steve, may the best team win on Saturday. Thank you for joining me.
No worries.
So big thanks to Steve for giving us his thoughts. I'll make sure I leave a link to their podcast in the description down below. Guys, let me know your thoughts and your score predictions as well in the comments section. Love to hear what you're thinking. And do you think the pressure is on Bruno Lage, or does he deserve a lot more time in your book? It's an interesting argument, an interesting discussion, let's say. I don't want us arguing in the comments section down below. But yeah, I think the pressure is definitely on. And hopefully we do see Wolves grab a few goals. Hopefully, it's going to be a busy end to the deadline day. If you guys are catching this on deadline day, we should be doing a stream right now for it. If not, obviously you can catch it back and we'll do some recaps of all the transfer news as well. As always, guys, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you all very, very soon.